is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
We're barely bowl eligible here on KC Sports Network. I'm Tucker Franklin, joined as always by Matt Lane, 1/3 of the KC Laboratory, and you know him probably from this podcast exclusively, I would assume. Matt, how are you doing? How's your week been? College football is here. It's here. We got to watch some games. We got to do all kinds of stuff. It's a very, very, very exciting time.
We got a penalty for two players wearing the same jersey number on a special teams play. We got a Big Ten football game that came down to a field goal at the last second to end 13-10 after 800 punts. We saw Billy Napier fail to do a good coaching job yet again. College football is so back. I couldn't be more excited for it. Like we are here. As soon as I saw that flag for two players wearing the same number, I knew we were 100% back.
We actually happened to be watching that game at the same time, and I heard that, and I was doing something else. It was after the KC Laboratory. We were watching the games, and I said, "Wait, is that a penalty for two players wearing the same number?" You said it certainly is, and I was like, yeah, it's nice to be back. Great to be back. Hit both of my bets last night too, with Nebraska. They covered, which is great, and then Missouri, that over total hit, which is great. Well, on that last touchdown drive there, which I wasn't sure was going to happen. I didn't know if Missouri was going to score any points against South Dakota in the second half, but we did it. We hit the over 44.5. Good times.
And we're recording this on Friday, so we're giving this quick reaction to some of the Thursday games. My biggest takeaway from the Thursday games is, Billy Napier is still struggling to coach at the Power 5 level. And I get it. It's only year 2. He preached being patient, but man, you can't go into Utah after they beat you, or you beat them last year. You now go into Utah and they're missing their best two players. They're missing their starting quarterback in Cam Rising, their starting tight end and Brant Keithy, and you guys just get bopped. I mean, you get taken down a peg. You're getting taken to the woodshed. You're out there trying to play bully ball against Utah, and it's failing miserably. So that's my thing. Utah, good. Florida under Billy Napier, I'm not sure about the direction that team's going. What about you? What was your biggest takeaway from our Thursday night slate here?
I think that was the big thing with Florida, especially. That score was 24-11, but it felt a lot like that deficit felt a lot bigger than what it was. Watching that game the whole time, because Florida couldn't get anything going. I feel bad for Nebraska. That was one of my big takeaways, which is a very weird thing for me to say, Maddie. You know me. You know I'm not a big Nebraska guy. But at some point, man, it's hard to watch it happen over and over to Nebraska. Minnesota, give them all the props in the world for that comeback. That touchdown catch was incredible on 4th down.
You don't have to.
I guess that's fair. I guess you don't have to, because Nebraska basically gifted it to him
twice.
They gifted it to him twice. Just an insane game. I think that those were the two biggest things to take away. Obviously, UCF rolls over Kent State. I don't think there was a big surprise there. Maddie, I didn't end up finishing the Arizona State game against Southern Utah. It ended up being a 3-point game. It ended up being a 3-point game. I think when I stopped watching, it was at halftime, and I think Arizona State might have been up 24-3 at that point. But there was a sandstorm.
Yes, there was a dust storm, and they finished the half in the storm. Yeah. And then it got delayed at halftime. I mean, a while too. Not even like a short, like it was a solid delay. Now, Jaden Rashada, true freshman quarterback, some may remember him as supposed to be going to Florida, and goodness, looks like they could have used him, and Florida couldn't get their NIL money organized to pay him. So he left Arizona State. He got the start, 2 touchdowns, over 200 yards, looked solid for a freshman as Arizona State beats Southern Utah. That was a fun nightcap that I also did not get to finish. I tapped out during the sandstorm.
I believe it was like 2:45 in the morning Central Time when they restarted that game. So Maddie, your time, that'd be 3:45.
I was waking up. I probably could have caught the end of that game, honestly. If I would have known when I first woke up, I might have been able to catch the tail end of that game.
Absolutely insane. Glad to see. I think legend has it that they're still playing that game right now. But it's crazy. I think that score was 24-3 at half. I feel like I might be tripping, but I'm going to look that up, Maddie, because I'm
21-7 at half.
Okay,
21-7 at half.
So they scored 3 points the rest of the game after, as you mentioned, Rashada balled out in that first half. He threw some really great balls. They scored 21 points in the first half. Only 3 points the rest of the game.
So there was a blocked punt in the fourth quarter while Arizona State was up 24-14. So that brought it a little bit closer. Not that still
Gotcha.
doesn't get credit, but that brought it a little bit closer.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. But if you frequented this show last year when we called it KCSNU Kickoff, you kind of know the structure of what we're going to do for this podcast. And we are going to give you a watch schedule. We are going to tell you what games you want on what TVs going on at the same time. Maddie and I are going to give you our best noon, 11 a.m. kickoff games, our best afternoon game, and a best primetime game for this Saturday slate. And then we're going to give you a couple wild card games, and we have got this year a new segment that we're going to be doing is our Sicko Game of the Week. Got to give a hat tip to the Sickos committee out there on Twitter. Great follow. If you don't follow them already, you should be. So go follow the Sicko committee on Twitter. Maddie, let's get started with the first game that we are going to be talking about on this Saturday slate. Barely Bowl eligible watch schedule. It's an 11 a.m. noon kickoff wherever you are, whether the Central Time or the East Coast time zone. Colorado, the first game of the Deion Sanders era in Colorado as they travel to Fort Worth to take on number 17 TCU. That game will be on Fox. Maddie, first impressions of this matchup.
Boy, have the popcorn ready. Like, right? I'm just like, I don't know what's this is like Nebraska versus Minnesota, but like turned up to a 26 because we didn't know what to expect with Nebraska or Minnesota. Both teams were having a lot of changeover. Same thing here. TCU just went to the national championship game. They got destroyed, but they went, and then they lost like essentially everybody that mattered from that team. Almost everyone that mattered from that team went into the NFL draft. And then Colorado, 68 transfers, I think is what it was from last year to this year. I don't think anybody knows what to expect in this game. And so you have Deion Sanders making headline after headline. You have Shedeur Sanders is coming in. You have Travis Hunter's over there for Colorado, and that's all anybody wants to talk about. But on the flip side, you have a TCU team that's, not returning a ton of guys. They need a bunch of people to step up. So like I 100% am going to watch this game. Like you can't miss this. This is the very first game of prime in Colorado. You have to check out against the reigning national championship team, a team that just won a game in the college football playoff. This one's going to be, I hope, a lot of fun. It definitely has a chance to end in a disappointing, very quick blowout fashion for TCU as well.
It does. I think that's so interesting about this game because you look at what the line is from our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook. Vegas doesn't like Colorado. Like whether it's futures bets, whether it's line making, Vegas seemingly does not like this team. As TCU is favored by 20.5 points. That's a lot of points for two teams that we really don't know a whole lot about. Chandler Moore slated to be that starting quarterback for TCU, who he was tapped last year to be the starting quarterback before he got hurt. Max Duggan came in and did not relinquish that job. TCU is an interesting case. They do have some transfers that they brought in on the offensive side of the ball, probably to help negate some of those losses that they got. But the guys that they lost last year were some dogs that are playing in the NFL right now. So,
and Chandler Morris started versus Colorado last year and was really bad. He was not good versus Colorado. So now what should be an improved Colorado roster, right? Like it's a better roster right now. It should be a better team last year. Now he has to go up there and face them again. And like, I don't know if Colorado's defense is going to be good, but like there's one thing that you can be sure of is that Deion Sanders is going to have some defensive back talent, right? So whether it's Cormani McLean that came in there to Colorado or Travis Hunter when he's playing cornerback, Trevor Woods at safety, somebody is going to make some plays for Colorado on the back end. It'll be up to Chandler Morris to mitigate that. I don't know who's going to be his leading target. Savion Williams at wide receivers back. He's another big bodied guy who's going to make the plays, but like I think the game might start. Personally, think the game's going to start out and be a little bit more back and forth than what a lot of people think. As the game wears on, I don't know if the ultimate talent and just like level of player, each position starts to be too much for Colorado and they get wore down by TCU. But I think to start, you might see a pretty good back and forth for the first quarter while this new Colorado Buffaloes team comes in ready to try to light the world on fire.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. You mentioned his matchup, Chandler Morris' stat line against Colorado. He's 13 for 20, 111 yards, 65% completion percentage, and his longest was a 20-yard ball. He didn't have a touchdown, didn't have an interception. Not great what you wanted to see against a Colorado team that was historically bad last year. especially on a team that was undefeated and made the national championship. Seems very weird. But Maddie, there's a lot of dudes on Colorado's roster, as you mentioned. But like when it comes to NFL prospect wise, who are some of the guys that you're circling from kind of both sides of the ball?
I mean, it's the guy, right? Travis Hunter. He's the best player in this game. Whether he wants to play corner or wide receiver, he'll play in the NFL. I think he should play wide receiver. And that's the crazy part is when he's playing wide receiver, there's less reps of that. There is less snaps of him playing wide receiver, and I've still seen enough to be like, nah, that's where I would try to play him. But whether it's corner or wide receiver, Travis Hunter is going to be a stud. He will play both ways. And then I'm intrigued by Shadur Sanders, quarterback. I liked what I saw out of him. And now we're taking the step up in level of competition. We'll see how it goes. If I'm not mistaken, he's a little bit undersized. I think he's listed at 6'2", 215. We'll see from combine time what that looks like. But I think he's solid. So I think Colorado has some guys there. I think you have so I'm talking about a potential wide receiver, a quarterback. I think you have a cornerback for TCU got your eyes on that might be trying to stop Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I do have a cornerback for TCU. You talk about cornerbacks, and especially when I think about this from a Chiefs perspective, you always got to look at the cornerbacks, of the guys that they can do. But Josh Newton, a guy who was named to the All Big 12 first team on defense, a guy who is going to be tasked with very early on trying to stop some pretty talented guys. Not only Travis Hunter on that team, but they brought in some other talented wide receivers from all across the country. As you mentioned, 68 transfers on that team. Basically, the whole team looks different than it did a year ago. Newton's going to have his hands full with those guys back there. A defense that for TCU last year that was, to put it kindly, not very good, and was kind of at some point, sometimes that's what you could kind of point to for a lot of the problems that they had last year. So want to see a little bit of a step up from there. But that's a guy that I think that could be a very big impact player for TCU in this game. But Maddie, let's get to the spread. As I mentioned, Vegas hates Colorado. They hate them. 20.5 points. What are you leaning with in this game with number 17 TCU hosting the revamped Colorado Buffaloes?
That's a lot of points, right? We rode hard for TCU last year on the KCSNU kickoff show. They were kind of our team. We rode hard for them. We liked them. But the thing is, there's been so much turnover. I love Josh Newton. I thought he was one of the better defensive players, if not the best defensive player for the Horned Frogs. He's also a sixth-year senior. That's not what you want out of the cornerback if you're talking about the NFL prospect side of it. But this is a different team. This is a different TCU team. A lot of what made last year's team so fun isn't there. I still love Sonny Dykes. I still love the coaching staff, but they lost Garrett Riley. They lost a lot of guys on the offense and defensive side. So I don't know if this is that same team that I was ride or die for last year. Give me Colorado. Let's roll a prime. I was sitting on Nebraska with the points against Minnesota. We'll take Colorado in prime with the points coming up. I think, like I said, I think the beginning of this game, they'll come out and go toe-to-toe with TCU for a little bit. If they fall behind late, I don't think it'll be by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. 20 and a half points is a lot. And, people who frequent this show, people who know me know that it's a lot of points. I don't feel comfortable taking teams with that many points. I think Mizzou was a 27-point favorite last night, and I did not feel comfortable taking that. These games are very tough when it comes to spreads because what if TCU does get up and TCU, takes foot off the gas a little bit? Colorado gets a late touchdown and can mess everything up. I'm taking Colorado in the points as well, not because I like Colorado, but because it's too many points. That's why I want to make that clear. I think it's because it's too many points for them. But Maddie, great point. I think this game could be a little bit closer than a lot of people think because TCU's lost a whole lot. Colorado's still trying to find their identity, and they might sneak up on some people.
I think Colorado can score. I think Colorado will score. I think Colorado will get pushed around in the trenches, especially as the year goes on. But is that something that TCU and that defensive front with 3 down linemen are really going to take that much of an advantage of? No, I think Colorado, especially early in the year, will score points. It's really hard to cover by 3 touchdowns versus a team that can score points.
Absolutely. Just writing down our picks here for the sake of transparency. Maddie and I sticking with the Colorado plus 20 and a half points. Let's move on, Maddie, to the next game. As this is a fun one. This is a fun one here. It's a sneaky fun game, I would say.
Oh man.
As Boise State, the Broncos travel to Seattle, Washington to take on the number 10 Washington Huskies. Washington favored by 14 points in that game. It's this is a sneaky good game, Maddie. A very sneaky good game.
Listen, I'm a Huskies guy too. I like the Huskies. I was
Sure.
big on the Huskies last year. Love the offense. They were missing that kind of dog to them that TCU had, and that's why we kind of were ride or die with TCU last year over the Huskies. That's what separated them, right? I think another year under Kalen DeBoer, I think another year coming in with Michael Penix and this entire staff, I think this Washington team is going to come back with a little more grit. So, they're high up there on my team for 2023 listing. The reason this game's so good, though, I think everyone kind of remembers the beginning of last year where Boise State ended up, I think, losing to UTEP after already losing to Oregon State. And they thought that Boise was kind of having a down year, but they turned it around. Boise State finished the year pretty strong. They became a little bit more of a road grinding team, a little bit more physical. And it looks like they might be setting themselves back up to take control of the Mountain West yet again, like they have for a decade and a half now almost. Like they seem like they're poised for it. This is a tough game right off the bat, right? I mean, you got Washington, this high-flying offense coming in. They're going to go up against Boise State. I think it's a sneaky good game. I'm excited for it, but I think you have two very clashing styles here of the high-flying Washington offense versus a Boise State that kind of wants to ground and pound and play this kind of grind-out, low-scoring game.
You mentioned Kalen DeBoer at the top, but I think he's done actually a really good job at Washington. That I think he's been a very underrated head coach at Washington because since he took over last year, right? But in the year that he had 11-2 with the Huskies. Now he does have Michael Penix there. Obviously, that's a big help to have the quarterback position shored up when you take over a head coaching job. But what he did last year, I think, was surpassed my expectations for the Huskies. When you talk about Michael Penix and knowing what Michael Penix was at Indiana before he came to Washington, how his development in Washington has been a really good thing to see if you're a Huskies fan. And you talk about not only Michael Penix, but there's also a lot of guys on that offensive side of the ball. Their wide receiver room is absolutely loaded. It's stacked. Do they have the second best wide receiver room in the country outside of Ohio State?
Oh, so see, you run into a little bit of a pickle here with the second because you can also throw Texas in there. You can throw LSU in there, and you can throw Florida State in there, right? Like, and then I would put Washington right there too, though. I think it's like those are your like what did I just name 5 or 4? 4, but that's your top clear. That's clearly your top 4, I think, wide receiver rooms in college football, and they're really good. Like, I don't want to take anything away, but those other rooms are also very good. We talk about a couple of them later potentially. Yeah, I mean. Rome Odunze, Jalen McMillan, Polk, like they have all of these guys that Michael Penix can throw the ball to. And Michael Penix is not afraid to sling that football around. At 4th and 5, he just wants to think a YOLO shot to the end zone on a 4 verts play. Sure, Michael Penix is your guy and he's going to do it. So the challenge is going to be on Boise State without JL Skinner, who went to the NFL draft and was kind of the leader of that room last year, to slow down this Washington passing attack. Washington's defense wasn't exactly great last year. It was actually a problem. So Boise State might have a little bit of success running the ball, but when you get it's college football, right? Boise State's not going to sit there and just completely dominate a well-recruiting, well-talented Washington team to just grind them out on the ground all game long. It'll be up to them to really score points and slow down that Washington passing attack. And that's where I see a little bit of trouble for them coming in trying to do that.
Absolutely. It's going to be an interesting game because that 14-point spread, I think, is also an indication of how obviously Vegas feels of it. But I'm curious I'm going to look this up, Maddie, where the public money has kind of lied so far in this game of where people are kind of taking the Huskies. And these week one.
Go ahead. I think some people are just a little scared of Washington's defense from last year because it was pretty bad. Yes. So I think people are scared and they see this 14. Washington's favored by 14 points here. I think people are scared to take this team that essentially couldn't stop a nosebleed last year against a team that is, with George Halani at running back, Boise State's running back. He's a redshirt senior, but George Halani's good. He's coming off a 1,000-yard rushing season, decent little receiver, had double-digit touchdowns. I think people are afraid to lay the points with the Huskies right now, even though most people would probably pick the Huskies to win. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of the money's on Boise State. And now here's where you tell me how wrong I am.
No, it's not. It doesn't look like it's out yet. The percentage of the money, just by the time we're recording this podcast. But Boise State, man, it's an interesting team. Another guy I wanted to bring up, though, about the Washington offense is they get the Mississippi State transfer and Dylan Johnson, the running back into their team. I think that could be interesting fast if they can run the ball. Now, Pac-12 teams aren't necessarily known as ground and pound, rough and tumble teams, but could be an interesting piece that they add to that offense. But a stat that I wanted to bring up, Maddie, about the old Washington Huskies when they play games at their home place. Washington has covered the spread in 7 of its last 8 games against non-conference opponents at
Oh,
Husky Stadium. Which also shout out to Washington for naming literally everything Husky this. So there's Husky
dubs up.
Stadium, there's Husky track, there's Husky field, there's Husky it's all Husky this, which I'm as a guy who loves brand continuity, it's great. Um, is there anyone that we haven't talked about, Maddie, that you want to bring up in terms
Whew.
of
I mean,
prospects, players to watch
I
this?
I could go on way too long about Washington football players. They have a left tackle this year. I think he played left tackle last year. He might be a guard in the league, but Troy
Mm,
Fatanow, I think, quality player. Washington's put out some offensive linemen to the league recently,
yeah.
but really, get touch the defensive side. Braylon Trice, defensive end. Yeah, I think you're looking at a guy that might be looking at a first round pick next year, especially if he builds on what was his really good year last year. Chiefs fans, we have, Steve Spagnuolo parameters. Maybe defensive end isn't high up on the priority list anymore. But if you want to watch a guy that is screams Steve Spagnuolo from the mountaintops, it's Braylon Trice with his physicality and his strength. He plays D end for him. He led the team in sacks last year. Really fun football player. So there's a lot of fun guys on both sides of the ball for this Washington Huskies team.
Absolutely. Trice the first team guy when it comes to the All Pac-12 team this season. So the preseason All Pac-12 team, he was a first team guy. They also have a guy on the defensive line. I would try to pronounce his name.
Oh, let's go.
Zion Tudupolu Fitui.
Yes.
Washington always seems like they have these guys, right? Where they have big defensive linemen that'll stuff up the middle, stuff up. But that's always one of those positions I look at and was like, okay, Washington. Okay, let me look at their nose. Let me look at their nose guards. Let me see what they got there, because I'm sure they're gonna have a guy like that. And Utah has the same thing. And there's a lot of those Pac-12 schools that always will have big nose guards. That's another one. But Maddie, -14 for the Huskies. Who you taking?
So it was for Zion there. He was a first team All Pac-12 back in 2020 for the COVID year. He was a stud. Then he got hurt the next year, and he came back relatively quickly from, I believe it was an Achilles rupture. It could have been ACL, but it was one of the two. Big injury. Came back a little early, not too early, but came back quickly. And he hasn't quite looked like the same athlete. So fingers crossed that he can get back there this year, because he was on the trajectory to really be a pretty early round draft pick there for a while. I got to do it, right? This game's intriguing to me. This might be one of your best actual matchups to see on Saturday. It's certainly on my watch list. I'm taking Washington. We're laying the points. Give me Michael Penix Jr. putting up big money, big numbers. He's going to be on everyone's Heisman list because of the numbers he's going to put up for the most of the year. I think DeBoer has this Huskies team come out flying. Boise State theoretically could put up a fight with the game style, but I think the points are too much to overcome for the old Broncos.
Looking at the last matchups, now it's always tough to look at these last matchups because you don't really know different teams, right? But the last time they faced was in 2019. Washington was the home team, and Washington beat them 38-7. Obviously, that is more than 14 points. So I'm also going to take Washington just because I believe in the high flying offense. Not necessarily the defense is a little iffy, but they're going to score so many points it won't matter. Is basically kind of what I've landed on with this team. So both of us taking the same picks. We've got the same picks going into our third game of the watch schedule. This is the 6:30, 7:30 game, whether you are on the country. 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern. Number 7 North Carolina takes on number 16 South Carolina in Charlotte, North Carolina. That game is on ABC or ESPN3. You should be able to get it on ABC. I don't know why you wouldn't be able to. But Maddie, first thoughts on this game going off essentially in your backyard. I think that's where they're playing it. Is your legitimate?
It's in Charlotte. Yeah, it's in Charlotte. My first thought was, should I go drive down to the game? That was my first thought. I got nothing going on Sunday yet. No NFL football. You want to try to sneak a 6:30 game in there? I can get. At the end of that game, I have enough time to get back home, get everybody ready for school the next day. Back of the mind. Drake May plays, right? That's appointment television no matter what. And you're going to put him up against an SEC ranked opponent against South Carolina. Yeah, I'll be there. I'm interested to see what North Carolina looks like this year. I think there's a lot of optimism around the program right now, even though the defense has been really bad. So
Mhm.
I am excited to see what this game brings. I am less certain about South Carolina.
Oh
Shane
yeah.
Beamer created so much good energy and things nice about the program, and then everybody left. Why does everybody leave if everything is pointing up and everybody loves Shane Beamer? I don't know. It's just something I can't quite put my finger on. So I'm intrigued by this game. South Carolina, though, they love to play the North Carolina schools. If there is one thing South Carolina gets up for, it's to beat up on NC State or UNC or Duke or anybody from North Carolina. They love it. So we'll see how this one has to go.
It's gonna be a really interesting game. I do think we're right there in that same camp of like I'm not sure how good South Carolina actually is. And that probably for me starts with Spencer Rattler. I'm not sure how good he actually is. I know he played better at the end of the season. They obviously beat Tennessee. That was a big win for them. As you mentioned, I'm not totally sold on Beamer ball. People out there in South Carolina, from what I hear, absolutely sold on it. They're all in. That's what they
Mhm.
love out there, and they're absolutely 100% sold into that program and what's going on. But Maddie, again, a good point that you mentioned is that like they had a lot of guys transfer out, and a lot of guys that were kind of going to be big pieces this year. I just don't know what to expect with South Carolina. You kind of know what you're going to get with Drake May in North Carolina a little bit, but you just don't know what you're going to get with South Carolina. And they were kind of that way last year, right? I mean, they were just kind
Yeah.
of like so hit or miss in terms of how they played. But this is one of those games where I do expect North Carolina to kind of win this one, right? But it's like the margin of victory, the spread, which we can get to later, is going to be one that's I don't know. It's going to be a hard one for me to pick, but Maddie, some prospects wise, let's take the quarterbacks out of it.
Ooh, okay.
Outside of the two pretty high end, I'd say pretty high end quarterback prospects. Uh, what are you looking for in terms on that side of on the outside of those two guys?
So this is where it gets a little tricky for North Carolina, right? Tez Walker, a transfer wide receiver from Kent State, is coming in. He technically hasn't gotten clearance from the NCAA to play yet. They haven't turned it down. They have not. He has applied for the waiver, hasn't received it. But are they just going to play him anyway? Like the NCAA hasn't said no. So can they just play him? Who's going to, I don't know. I legitimately don't know if there's any way to stop them from playing him at this point in time if they trot him out there. Last I heard, he's still taking first team reps of the practice all week. So like, I don't know if they were just doing it in case the waiver comes back or if they just plan on paying. I don't know. But Tez Walker has got a wide receiver for North Carolina. I definitely have my eyes on. Flip side, Cedric Gray, a linebacker for North Carolina, an athletic guy, kind of a rangy linebacker, another guy to keep in the back of your mind. And then for the other side, we got to give South Carolina some love here too. Juice
Mm-hmm.
Wells, a wide receiver, yak monster. Hey, you're going to think you're watching Deebo Samuel again, right? You're going to think you're watching Deebo Samuel again. I think he had like 600 yards after the catch last year, which was the most in the SEC out of his 928 total receiving yards. I'm pretty sure 600 were after the catch. So that's a guy that could really tear up a very bad North Carolina defense if there is an improvement there. But I mean, like that's where you got to go. The wide receivers first. I like Cedric Gray a little bit, and then I mean, still Drake May. You said no quarterbacks, but Drake May. Watching
Yeah.
Drake May all the time.
Well, obviously watch quarterbacks. Obviously watch Drake May. Obviously watch those guys. Hey, Maddie, South Carolina got himself a kicker, Kai Kroger. Pretty good guy. I think he was first team All SEC preseason. And you talk about wide receivers, Antoine Wells, a guy for South Carolina. That could be an interesting watch for Spencer Rattler and see who he kind of connects with there. Yeah, look at us. Look at us showing South Carolina some love. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Who
Listen,
would've
hey,
thought so?
look, you want me? I can build an easy path for South Carolina to win this game. They're an SEC football team with an SEC defense, and North
Yeah.
Carolina has historically been soft under Mac Brown. They
Yes.
have not shied away from getting their ass kicked up and down the field. So you want to say Drake May's not hitting on all cylinders? Maybe Tez Walker doesn't play. They're trying to replace Antoine Green and Josh Downs, and they don't have this transfer wide receiver they planned on relying on. And and Drake May can't find his rhythm, and he's having to put the entire team on his back. And South Carolina just comes out there and plays Beamer bully ball. It's there. Like, right. I wouldn't be completely surprising to see that happen. I'm just going to believe in Drake May and that offensive ability right now.
You talk about two things, Maddie. It seems like every time we do this podcast, it comes down to two things: it's quarterback play and it's coaching. I think North Carolina has the edge in both of those, truthfully, in my opinion. But let's get to the spread for this game. North Carolina favored by only 2.5 points on a neutral field, Maddie. How do you feel about the spread and what are you taking?
Man, like that's okay. Here it is. I'm taking North Carolina. I'm laying the points. I think they are I trust Drake May to beat Spencer Rattler and South Carolina by more than a field goal. I
Yeah.
think this is like year 3, I think, of Gene Chizik now. This North Carolina defense should finally start to turn a corner to becoming okay, just not terrible. If this defense is just okay, North Carolina is going to be completely fine all year. And if this defense is okay, they should be able to slow down this Shane Beamer, Spencer Rattler led South Carolina offense and let Drake May and their offense go ahead and put up points. I'm going
Yeah.
to take North Carolina with the points here, but it's just entirely believing in the fact that this defense is finally going to play up to an almost adequate level.
I got some stats. I got some nuggets for you, Maddie.
My favorite time, Tucker's Nuggets.
The D stands for Nuggets. The underdog has covered the spread in each of South Carolina's last 4 games at Bank of America Stadium. So, do that with you all. Last time South Carolina has played at Bank of America Stadium, that's 4 times the underdog has covered. That's where it's at right now, Bank of America Stadium. This is a tough one for me because I personally don't buy the hype of South Carolina. We're gonna get to see it. We're gonna get to see what they actually are, but I'm not buying South Carolina, so I'm gonna have to take by default UNC in the 2.5. I think they beat them by at least a field goal. I think I feel pretty good about that in terms of the results of that game. But so both taking UNC, I should say, not USC, not the Gamecocks. We're taking the Tar Heels minus 2.5 by 2.5 points. So, Maddie, something we're doing a little bit different last year or this year than we are last year. Like these are our wild card games that we have on, right? Maybe this is just because there's a lot of different like week 1 has been so different in years past. Is like they're trying to play games on different days and they're moving everything around, especially with Labor Day. They're trying to get games off of the weekend. Mizzou obviously always plays on Thursday. There's Thursday games to open up the season, but there's a couple of games that aren't on the Saturday slate that we wanted to talk about. That first one being probably, it is the biggest game of the weekend. LSU and Florida State, another neutral site game. Number 5 LSU versus number 8 Florida State. That game is at 6:30, 7:30 time Eastern Central. That's in Orlando, Florida on ABC. This game takes place on Sunday, correct, buddy? Sunday night.
Yes. This isn't just one of the biggest games of the weekend. This is one of the biggest games of the entire season. I mean, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
there's a chance that whichever one of these teams win this, I mean, they're very clearly going to be setting themselves up to get all the way to their respective conference championship games. Really only one more test that should be better than the opponent they're playing now, right? This is each one of these teams' first or second hardest game of the year, and it's coming right off the rip, right? This is a great game last year. LSU under new coach Brian Kelly made billions of mistakes and still lost on some terrible special teams blocking assignments. Both teams should be better this year, coming back in for a rematch. Like this is a banger of a football game. This is an awesome game. I think college football did a great job moving this thing into Sunday night here, sliding it in there, getting it here right at the last second. Because I mean, this is one. You're going to have 2 quarterbacks who are going to go to the NFL, but neither will probably be high picks. They're a lot better college quarterbacks than they are pro players. They both have great wide receiver rooms they're throwing to, talented offensive lines. There's players that could be the best defensive player in all of college football on both sides. Both teams potentially have guys that could be considered the best defensive player in football. Like this is a hell of a game.
Yeah. It really is. And I can remember this game last year it was special. It was one of those of like, wow, I cannot wait for more of this stuff. I need more of this stuff right now. But when you talk about LSU's team, I think the LSU's a really interesting program. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, the guy who was named for the best quarterback in the SEC preseason wise by media members. But they've got a very interesting offense. There's something about LSU where it seems like these coaches in their second season have a lot of success. When you talk about Ed Orgeron won a national championship. I believe Nick Saban won a national championship in his second year. Les Miles, I think, even won a national championship in their second year. So there's a lot of expectations here for Brian Kelly to win a title here. But you look up and down this roster. I mean, they're very talented. Like LSU is a very talented team. You do say the same thing about Florida State. I think Florida State really kind of came to their own last year. Obviously, winning that game last year was a big win for that program. I think Jordan Travis is a good quarter. I think Jordan Travis is going to be very good college quarterback. When it's all said and done, I'm excited to see if he can stay healthy. But Maddie, I think when we talked about Florida State during our ACC preview, I said something like to the effect of Florida State will be as good as Jordan Travis makes them, right? Like they're going to ebb and flow, I think, with Jordan Travis, with the way that team kind of evolves like that. But a very good game to kick off week one. I don't know if you can ask for a better matchup, truthfully, to kick off week one. It is on a neutral site too. It's in Orlando,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
I don't know how
is that neutral?
neutral it is, but it's not on one of the campuses, I should say. It's in Florida. Was that game played in Orlando last year? Do you remember off
I
the top
don't
of your head?
I don't think so. I
I thought it was
almost
at
want to
Florida
say
State.
oh, what was it? Okay. So I don't remember where it
Well,
was.
maybe it was at Death Valley. Let me do some
Yeah,
research.
I was gonna say I thought it was an LSU because I thought I remember the crowd shots after the bungled special teams plays. Um, no, this is great. Maybe it was another neutral site and they just still had that. I don't know. But like, what's great about this game, you're gonna prospects that I'm kind of got my eyes on here, even just
Yeah,
players.
go.
Keon Coleman just transferred into Florida State. They already had Johnny Wilson. These are two wide receivers, two really talented wide receivers. Flip side, LSU has Malik Neighbors. They also brought in Kyron Lacey as a transfer wide receiver. Malik Neighbors is one of the best wide receivers in the country. These two teams have wide receivers, and neither team has a secondary that has a chance to slow them down. These secondaries don't have top 50 type draft picks. They might not have top 100 type draft picks in the secondary. Do they have quality players? Sure, but they don't have guys going up against 4 wide receivers. I would be surprised if you don't see at minimum 3 of those guys going in the top 100 in this next year or the year after. So like, I think you might see some really good wide receiver play. It will be up to the quarterbacks to get them the ball. And that's where the next step is. And LSU's offensive line is young, but it's good. Will
Yeah.
Campbell, stud at left tackle. Emory Jones at right tackle, stud. 2 really good young offensive tackles. They have quality interior offensive linemen. Flip side, Florida State, offensive line, not as talented, but Jared Verse on the defensive line might be the best defensive player coming out in the draft, some people say. Like, so it's going to be interesting to watch these teams go back and forth and how they try to impact the opposing quarterback to help their secondary cover these amazing wide receivers.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those games where you're going to see a lot of guys playing in this game that will be playing on Sundays. Do love to see that. But as I mentioned, the line with this game, LSU favored by 2 points coming into the quote unquote neutral side. I looked it up. It was at Caesar Superdome last year. So another neutral site, but not really neutral site.
So they did like a home and away, but they called them both neutral sites.
Yes.
Okay.
Very interesting scheduling there from those two teams. But hey, nevertheless, good stuff. One in New Orleans, one in Orlando. Maddie, how do you feel about the Tigers -2?
So here it is. I like both these teams. I wish I could pick both these teams to win this game because these are two teams that I'm really high on both of them. Somebody has to win. It's college football, not the NFL after all. We focus on quarterbacks and coaching. I would give the slight quarterback edge to Florida State because I think Jordan Travis is a better thrower than Jane Daniels, although both quarterbacks are good. I give the coaching edge to LSU and Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
Not that Florida State's not doing a good job, but like I give the slight edge to Brian Kelly there. So like I keep coming back to almost being a wash. And if it's a wash, I feel like I have to go with Florida State. But no, I'm going with my homerism again. We're going to LSU. I always have a soft spot for LSU. Give me Harold Perkins coming out with some big defensive plays to save this game for LSU. Give me LSU -2 because I don't understand stuff under a field goal. I don't know how to pick games under a field goal. That gets really tricky for me. I don't know how to do it. If I think LSU is going to win, it's probably by more than 2 points.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I think LSU is going to be a lot better than what people think. Now I know you're saying like Tucker, LSU is ranked number 5. Like that, they're pretty high ranked right now. Yeah, I think they're going to be pretty good. Like I think this team could sneak up and catch some people. I'm also going to take the LSU -2. I have been really big on the Jordan Travis, the Florida State bandwagon, but I just think that LSU is legit. Like I think they're going to be a legit team. This could come back and blow up in my face, Maddie. But nevertheless, LSU moving on. All right, let's do a Monday game. How about we do a Monday game as number 9 Clemson?
Monday Night Football. Let's go.
Monday Night Football. Number 9 Clemson takes on Well, they travel down to Durham to take on Duke at 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find that on ESPN. Clemson versus Duke. Maddie, first thoughts on that?
What a time to be alive that we're picking a Duke football game to be one of our wild card games. We
Right?
have the entire college football schedule open to us, and we are like actively choosing the Duke Devils under second year coach Mike Elko to be here. And guess what? I don't feel bad about it at all.
Mm.
I liked watching Duke last year. That offense is goofy and fun. They tried hard. Yeah, they had a lot of turnover luck last year, but they gave it their all. They went out there and they ran a funky enough offense that they did some stuff. And on the flip side, hey, Clemson bought over big Garrett Riley to run that offense.
Yeah.
They got rid of DJU. They're coming in. They're kind of resetting where that offense is, and they brought in Garrett Riley to get things on track. And there's a lot of interesting stuff coming into this game to see kind of like which of these two programs is ready to build on last year, and then which one might kind of regress a little bit back into what Clemson's been good, but like which one might regress a little bit.
For sure. And I think you talk about the big storyline of this game is how Clemson is going to look with that overhaul that they did on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, DJU at Oregon State, is that right? And is that where he ended up going?
Yeah.
Random, by the way. But anyway, they have a whole
Great
offensive overhaul that they're going through. It's going to be interesting to see how they do that. And it's probably a good primer opponent to go up against Duke. But a Duke team that's not – they're not a slouch anymore. I think that they're a respectable. They're getting to the level to be a respectable program. I wish we got a Kansas Duke matchup again this year, because I think that like that matchup this year would be a little bit better than it would have been in years past.
I mean, it was a solid game last year, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Kansas came out on top. What did they win by, like 8 points ish, roughly? Like it was a
Yes.
score. And I don't think it was that close down the stretch. I think Duke kind of made it look closer late in the game, if I'm not mistaken. But like it was a solid game last year. And yeah, it would be fun to have those two go at it again, I think. But Duke has a little bit harder schedule this year than they had last year when they were a 9-win team last year, if I remember correctly. They're going up against Clemson. They're going up against the big guy in the ACC. Funnily enough, I'm more intrigued by Duke's draft prospects, though. Like, if you want me to start pulling out players to watch for, like, from the NFL perspective, Riley Leonard, draft eligible quarterback, has my attention. Left tackle, probably going to play guard in the NFL. Graham Barton has my attention. Jordan Moore, a wide receiver who came to Duke as a quarterback, wasn't going to take Riley Leonard's spot, has transitioned to wide receiver. I think he might be ready to take a big step this year. So like this Duke Blue Devil team has some guys that interest me as draft prospects, whereas Clemson will definitely have players. Their defensive front is always going to have draftable players, but none of them in the early summer watching jumped out to me as guys that like I have to have my eyes glued on. The linebacker room is really good. Don't get me wrong. It's just not a spot that I'm going to gravitate towards during a live game to watch for a draft prospect, because Clemson just does this whole team over everything move.
They really do. And you talk about that linebacker room for Clemson. Two guys named to the all conference preseason first team with Jeremiah Trotter and Barrett Carter. So a couple guys that are pretty good. What about Dwayne Carter? What if I say that about the Duke defensive tackle?
Little three tech action.
Little three tech. Listen, I'm giving some love to some three techs today. You gotta show the big boys some love. But looking at this game in terms of the line, I think that, Maddie, speaking for myself, a little bit closer than I thought it would be, especially with number 9 Clemson going to an unranked Duke team. Clemson favored by only 13 points. Do you think the Tigers win by more than 2 touchdowns?
Okay. Coming into this, I probably was going to lay with Duke. If you were going to give me Duke plus 13, I'd probably take it against most teams in college football this year, sans like Georgia, Ohio State kind of teams. And I don't think Clemson's on that level right now. They need to show me that they're on that level again. So I probably would have said, yeah, give me Duke versus anybody else with plus 13. They would have covered every loss they had last year if you were giving them 13 points. That said, Garrett Riley, man, I think we're in the era of Garrett Riley. You know, we got Lincoln Riley over there at USC doing his thing. We have TCU going to the national championship with Max Duggan at quarterback. I mean, come on, watch him in the preseason, man. Garrett Riley was doing a lot of heavy lifting for that offense, and now he's at Clemson with that talent. I think you're going to see Clemson's offense bounce back this year, and I think it's going to start immediately. Give me Clemson laying the points versus Duke, and I did not think that I was going to end up being here when we kind of started this show earlier this summer.
Interesting. A couple of nuggets I got for you here. Clemson has failed to cover the spread in 10 of its last 11 games in September.
I see how this goes. You wait until after I make my pick to give me the Nuggets.
Yeah, I have to. That's just how it goes. But Maddie, I'm with you. I'm going to take Clemson in the 13 as well, just because I just feel you nailed it when you talk about the offense. I think that there's a lot of meat on the bone there with the offensive vitality. They're going to try to get themselves ready to go for some, the tougher competition that they're going to face. This is going to be a very interesting one. So Clemson minus 13 for both of us. Maddie, we made the same picks. This is not great podcast content. We've got to scrap the whole thing. We have to restart. We made all the same picks. So that's not very good at all.
Yeah. So, here's the thing, Tuck. You beat me in week 1 by 1 game. You beat me badly last year in these picks. If I just got to copy your picks to stay right on your tails until the last week, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be sitting there chomping at them heels. I'm not getting beat down like last year.
It's a great strategy, truthfully. It really is in terms of our picks going one by one. But we got one more game left. We're not going to dive into this one as much as we dove into the last two. But the Sickos game of the week. This is our sicko game that we are going to be talking about. And by the time you listen to this podcast, it might be over and this game could be on. But we're going to talk about Stanford at Hawaii on CBS Sports Network. That game kicks off Friday night at 11 p.m. The timing, the teams, what network it's on makes it all absolutely perfect for just an absolutely obscure football game.
This is perfect. Credit. You gave credit at the top. The Sickos game of the week is not our unique invention. This is just something that people that love college football, that find themselves watching a game past midnight sometimes of two teams that nobody has any business of watching on TV. That's what goes here. And if you're up past 11 p.m. watching Stanford, who is essentially all but giving up their football program. They got rid of David Shaw. Like, they're trying to do some stuff differently. But if you're watching Stanford fly out to Hawaii to play the game in the middle of a track, literally a track on metal bleachers, with everything else going on in Hawaii, you're a sicko like us. We'll be watching. We're not going to talk deep into it, but Braden Strager, quarterback for Hawaii, he slings the ball around. He made the game interesting in week 0 against Vandy by literally just throwing YOLO balls down the field and saying, hey, you guys can't cover this. I'm not certain Stanford can cover it either. So this could be a fun little game for Timmy Chang's Rainbow Warriors.
Right now, according to our friends at DraftKings Sportsbook, Stanford is favored by 3 points. I'm taking Hawaii. I don't care. I don't need any nuggets, but I'm taking Hawaii and the +3. Maddie, I don't know how you feel about it, but that is one of those picks where I'm just like, I'm cheering for chaos in this game.
My heart and my gut want me to take Hawaii so bad in this game, but my brain says Stanford. Stanford still has Pac-12 talent. They should be able to push around Hawaii in a way that Vanderbilt's not quite built to do yet. My logical side's going with Stanford, going with the Cardinals, but just know I will be rooting for Hawaii the entire time, and this is where I make up my game on Tuck that he stole last week.
This is it. That's the game. This is the game that you do it in. The Sickos game is where you make it up. But Maddie, appreciate you previewing all of these college football games with us for week 1. We'll be back next week with another jam-packed slate. I think week 2 is going to be even better than week 1. So any final thoughts, Matthew?
Listen, I'm just happy college football's here. I'm happy we're doing this. We're sitting here. We're building out a schedule for people to watch on like Saturdays, and this one goes from Saturday till Monday. Friday till Monday.
Friday to Monday.
But it's like, I'm excited for it, man. This is the best time of year as college football gets started back up. Everyone's excited for it. Even a bad football game is great at this point in time. So we're here. We're ready for it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end of the episode. We'll be back next week with another college football schedule and breaking down everything that happened from week 1. So for Matt Lane, I'm Tucker Franklin. We'll talk to you guys soon.